Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Trumos, Perek Zayin Halacha Gimel. We're learning today Daf Samach Tes. God willing, we will be concluding the 7th chapter of Masechta Trumos. So we are mamish on the beginning of the second line from the top of the Amud Rabbi Yechanan. One big rule that we spoke out at the end of last year is that the halacha of the Mishnah, which is the first case where you have one box of truma, one box of chulin, and you have a saw of truma that fell into one of the two boxes, ve'eino yudua, into which box it fell into, and the Mishnah allows us to say that it fell into the box of truma, leaving everything the way it is. That's only, we spoke this out, because if the truma fell into the truma, there is absolutely no negative consequence. If the truma fell into the chulin, it's going to make the box of chulin meduma. And because of it being an issue of the Rabbanon, we get to leave everything the way it is. Mashe'en kain, this is important, if you have two boxes, one of chulin and one of chulin, and I have a soft truma, and the soft truma falls into one of the two boxes, the eino yudua into which box it fell. In that case, both of the boxes become safek dimua. Because in that case, something negative happened. We can't prevent something negative from happening. One of the boxes will become meduma. We don't know which one, even though it's a darabanan issue. Both boxes become not meduma, safek dimua. Now we're going to begin today's daf by speaking out what is the consequence of safek dimua. What is the halacha of a safek dimua? That will be the opening part of today's daf. From there, we're going to move on to the second case in the Mishnah, where you had two boxes, one truma, one chulin, but they got intermixed one with the other. Nothing new fell into it. I don't know now which one is truma, which one is chulin. I ate one of the boxes. The rule is if someone eats truma b'shoigeg, the chayv to pay keren v'choimish. Here, I don't know if I ate truma b'shoigeg, so the Mishnah ruled that if I eat one box, I don't have to pay keren v'choimish. Safek, maybe I ate the chulin. If someone else eats the other box, they also don't have to pay keren v'choimish. If the same person ate both boxes, they for sure ate truma. If the boxes were of different sizes, of different values, they have to pay keren v'choimish from the smaller one. That was the Mishnah. With other pratim that we're going to read inside, there was a Rav Meir and Rabbi Yosi. The Gemara is not going to focus on that, but when we'll learn the Gemara, it's a small daf. We'll open up the Mishnah and we'll see it inside. What the Gemara will do today is that we're going to bring a Mishnah in Taros that we are familiar with. First of all, we had it in Bavli Psachim. Second of all, it's quoted many times. The case of the two shvilin. Two shvilin means that there is a road. There are two roads, but under one of the two roads, there is a human remains that was interred, that was buried on the full width of the road, under the road, which means that if someone went over the road, that road, vadai, they were mahil al hameis, and they became tamei b'tumas meis. Only thing is, the person was buried under one of the two roads. We don't know which one. Over there, there's a machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi, as we'll speak out when we'll get in there. And the Gemara is going to want to know whether our Mishnah can only follow one opinion, or as we'll see, whether our case, it's very similar. You did something wrong. You might have done something wrong. You ate one box. You didn't eat the other box. The Mishnah is basically very lenient. There is a certain nuance, which we will see if it relates or if it does not relate over here. The final part of today's daf will be focusing on the last case of the Mishnah. The last case of the Mishnah to review now in our intro. First of all, you have to know that truma should not be planted. If truma is planted on a biblical level, when it comes to a product that the seed decomposes, which are most items, when you put a seed in the ground, the seed decomposes and then something grows. That which grows from it is like starting brand new, which would mean biblically it's tevel. Midrabanan, we don't say that. Midrabanan, we have two dinim. Din number one is that if you plant truma, azoy, you shouldn't have done it. You have to overturn that which you planted. If you didn't do it, or if you overturned the earth and it still grew, Gidule Truma has a din of Truma. That is what we learned in the Mishnah. We're going to read it inside. There are more details. What we're going to have in the Gemara is Gidule Gidulin. And there is a general rule that Gidule Gidulin, if the seeds decompose, Gidule Gidulin is not Truma, it's Tevel. If the seeds do not decompose like an onion, so there's the remnant of the original. So the general statement is that by davar she'ein zaroi kola, even gidulin is problematic, but the Gemara is going to begin to qualify and say that perhaps really it's going to turn out to be a machlokes between Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yonasan, that if the new product becomes more than the original in whatever ratio was needed for bittul, similarly by kilei hakerem, we're going to have a similar concept. There it's 200 to 1, by truma it's 100 to 1. There's a machlokes whether we can use the new growth, viewing it as normal chulin, I know tevel, but not truma. That's the point. And either it will be mevatel, the original, or not. In other words, there's a machlokes whether if something is asur, and from it there is an outgrowth, does the outgrowth extend the isur? So everything is like the original. There's no chulin and truma. There's no chulin and kili akeren, or no. Or the original is taka b'davar she'ein zaroi kala. Whatever is from truma remains truma, but something that grows out from it is new. And if you have the right ratio, then it could be mavat. That's a very significant machlokes. That will be the final topic of today's daf. And let's come right back to the beginning. So again, like we mentioned, daf samach tes, second line, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, by the two dots. The point is that if a soft truma falls into one of two boxes, both of them are chulin, we don't get to be lenient. We don't get to say what's only the rabbanan. So lamashal, the one option might have been, I can eat one of the two. I can argue it fell into the other one. You don't get to say that. By the Mishnah, you get to say it. Because saying that the truma fell into the truma creates no change. It's like everything remains with its original chazaka. These are the words of the Bavli. So the chazaka, the me'ekara, is put into the way that we paskin the halacha. We don't have that option if truma falls into chulin or chulin. You get it, Aviv? Okay. Now, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, what's the status of Safek Meduma? Safek Meduma, which would be the status of both of these boxes, they are exempt from challah. In other words, they are given truma status. By the way, Meduma also is pater from challah, which is a chiddush, because chulin is chayv and challah. Only truma is pater from challah. Nevertheless, Meduma dinoi ketruma. Chiddush of Rabbi Yochanan is that even Safek Meduma, we're not machmir on both sides. You could have argued, okay, on one hand, the non-kohen cannot eat it because the truma might have fell in here. On the other hand, maybe the truma fell into the other box. Maybe this is bonafide chulin. And if it's chulin, you chayiv and challah. We don't do that. We say that Safek Demua pater min challah. But in the case of the Mishnah, the way Rabbi Yochanan words the case of the Mishnah is Safek Demua hanechel mishum dema. I'm just saying, these are gavaldik. The case of our Mishnah was one was truma, one was chulin. What did the Mishnah paskin? That we say that the truma fell into the truma. What did we learn yesterday? Let me use new words for what we learned yesterday. It's not like the halacha is telling you what the mitzias is. Vaharaya, when you have to add into the equation the question of tuma and tara, we learned yesterday that b'negeya tuma. We don't say that. We say that even the box of chulin, right? If the truma, remember that case, the first case in the Braisa. Then we say maybe there is a truma in here. Maybe the truma tameya fell into the chulin tohirin. So it's not pshat that the halach is telling you what happened. We don't know what happened. What do you do when you don't know? The halacha tells you what you have to paskin like. So when you get one din, you paskin like this. When you get another din, you paskin like that. That's why Rabbi Yochanan calls it safek dimua. So even when there was no tuma and tara. Safek dema, hanechel mishum dema means soft truma. Box of truma, box of chulin. The box of chulin is called safek dimua hanechel mishum dema. There's still a suffix. Maybe the truma fell into it. If there would have been a tuma and tara issue, we would have said it. We would have said that possibility as well. We would have paskined like that possibility as well. Even though there was no tuma and tara issue, even in the simple case of the Mishnah, where we paskin that the truma fell into the truma, sha'ani oimer, not sha'ani oimer, not b'mitzias. The box of chulin is called safek dimua, but you can eat it. If you can eat it, now you're chayiv and challah. At least that. when I learned this yesterday, what I really think Rabbi Yochanan was trying to emphasize, and that's the hemshach of the Gemara, is that when I learned the Mishnah, I thought, Sha'ani Yomer, like the halach is telling you, Baruch HaKodesh, what happened. No. I think his biggest chiddush is just the word safek demua, that you can eat. Once you paskin, you can eat it, then you have to, then you chayv and chalom. Okay. Now I'm gonna go back. I want to go back. I want to read the second case of the Mishnah, which is the case where not that truma fell into two boxes. You had two boxes. The boxes got mixed up with each other, and one chacham went b'shoyig. He didn't know. A non-kohen went and he ate up one of the two boxes. So I just want to read the whole case, even though the Gemara is going to focus on one detail. So let's go. You had two boxes, and ein yodua ezi truma ve'ezi chulin. You no longer know which one is which. And now achal es achas mehen. You ate one b'shoigig. You didn't know anything. You ate a box, and then they tell you, "Oh, maybe you ate truma." So the Mishnah first paskins that you're pater. And if you remember, I just spoke out of Tosfos, which is important. Tosfos says that not pshat pater completely. Why not? Because you can only say pater when it's a financial issue, in which we apply the rule of amoitzi mechaveda olavaraya. But meneged the dine of kapara, that if I eat truma b'shoigig, I'm chayiv kapara. And how do I get my kapara? By separating from my chulin misukanim a keren v'chaimish, and they are then imbued with kedushas truma. Tosfos says you have to do that, and then you get to sell it to a kohen. Stop. Just to clarify what pater means. The Rambam does not learn it that way, but it's good to hear that. So, anyways, pater, and then v'hashniya. How do I behave with the other one? V'hashniya noyeg ba'ketruma. Because if I'm saying that what I ate was chulin, what am I implying, Aviv? That the other one is truma. So I have to treat it like truma. But even though I treat it like truma, I don't treat it like truma legamre. If it would be truma, then it would be pater min achala. No, you have to go chumra. You have to go both chumras. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's truma all the way. Since we're paskening that the one that I ate is chulin, for me, the other one is truma. For me, consistent. Very good. Now, next case. Achal acher min hashniya. Another guy ate the second box. The other guy gets to do the same thing. He's also pater. If the same person, Aviv, if I ate two, if I ate both, now that for sure I ate one that's truma, financially I get to be the most lenient. So if they had different values, I only have to pay the keren v'chaimish from the smaller one. I just wanted to read it inside. And now we're going to jump to the Mishnah and Taras. So achal achad min hashniya pater, etc. Omer Rabbi Yochanan. The other one is exempt. Did the Mishnah give any qualifications? No. Now we're gonna compare this to the scenario where you had the two shvilin. You have two roads, Aviv. Under one road, someone is buried in a way that whoever walked on the road, for sure they walked over the corpse. Not overstepping. They're buried under the ground. According to the Rashbi, a Yid, according to the Chachamim, even a non-Yid, a corpse of a goy, l'kula alma is matame tumas meis, b'mago u'b'masa. When it comes to tumas oil, Rashbi says, atem kruim adam. Adam kiyamas ba'oil, Adam, and that's it. Okay, whatever. So it's a case that you're going to want to stomach. So everyone holds. If one person walked on one road, there is a rule. Let me just say the rule that safek tuma b'reshus harabim sfeikoi tahar. Even though normally we have a safek deraisa l'chumra, right, Aviv? Not over here. Even according to those who hold that safek deraisa mi deraisa l'chumra, the sheet of the Rashba. Even that opinion holds when it comes to Tuma and Tara. If there's a doubt of Tuma, you hear, Lenny, Shus Harabim is defined by there are more than two people there, which will be the case of the road or people walking on the road. In other words, many people walked on the road, but I'm the one that's from. I'm going to the rabbi to ask, what's the din? So the rule is Tar. It gets complicated if I walked on road number one. Let's say Reuven went on road number one. Shimon went on road number two. If we're going to go now into if they both come separately, each one will be told, you're tahor. What happens if they come together and we're going to define it together? At some point, we might say that since they're coming together, you can't paskin to both together, you're both tahor. It doesn't work that way. And you see how that's going to be related over here. If two people ate it, our Mishnah never spoke about that nuance. Did they ask together? Did they ask separately? Okay. So Rabbi Yochanan, our Mishnah only follows Rabbi Yehuda and not Rabbi Yosi. What's Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yehuda? The Tanin and Tamon, a Mishnah in Taras, that Rabbi Yehuda Oimer, in the case where there were two people, and by the way, the case of two people, the way the Mishnah gives, isn't only Benegeya, them, they also then touch tahar food. So if one is tamei, then the food that he or she touched will also become tamei. That nuance is not negeya for here. Same concept. Each one has their own doubt. Each one should follow the rule of Safek Tuma B'Reshus Harabim Sveika Tahar. But now comes Rabbi Yehuda and he says, hold on. That im nisha'alu b'bas achas, the Gemara will define what that means. We can go now that they both came at the same time. And they both asked the Rav, are we tahar or are we tamei? There are many other ways of understanding it, as we'll see soon. Now it's amazing. I mean, one can argue. But since they're asking together, Beis Din cannot give one psak that is not true. You're both tahar, it can be. Halachically, it could be. But the way it's worded puts Beis Din in a corner. Since they're coming together, vadai, one of them is tamei. Once one is tamei, and you don't know which one, then both are tamei. Similar to what I mentioned in the intro, that if one soft truma fell into two boxes of chulin, and ve'enu you do unto which one, both are safek dimua. You can't say one is, which one? Once there's a problem with one, there becomes a problem with both. Then tameim, if they inquire, the za'achar zeh has to be defined, then tahoirin. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. Now that would fit with our Mishnah. Achal achas, potter. Achal, another guy, the other box, potter. However, Rabbi Yosef Omer, benkach or benkach tamein. Benkach, it doesn't matter how they come to ask. The current understanding of Rabbi Yosef is that since Beis Din knows that there was a person on Reuven went on one road and Shimon went on the other road, since they know that, they can't pass into either one that they are tahar, and that appears not to work with our Mishnah. Minimally, the second one should be chayiv. Now, I just want to clarify something. What do you think would Rabbi Yossi say over here? I just want to speak out what the Noisei Kalim say over here. Aviv, there's only one soft truma that fell into one of the two boxes. I'm sorry, forget about it. One truma, one chulin. There's only one box of truma. I get it that by the case of the two shvilin, Beis Din will, according to Rabbi Yossi, no matter how they come, Beis Din will paskin. We're very familiar with safek tamei. We're familiar with that. You have a doubt, tamei, machma, you're tamei, you're tamei. It's easy to tell a person you're tamei based on a doubt. Many dinner, many foods we don't eat, not because we have a doubt. In this case, a doubt, be machmer. But when it comes to financial payment, how would that work? I'm just curious. So listen, Aviv, I ate one box, you ate the other box. There's only one truma. According to Rabbi Yossi, what will happen? Beis Din will tell both of us that we're chayv to pay keren v'chaimish. Not that I'll pay keren v'chaimish for what I ate and you'll pay keren. That not. Just to know. That would mean, the suggestion is that according to Rabbi Yossi, I would come with half of the money. You'll come with half of the money. We know the box of truma was worth $100. Keren v'chaimish is now $125. No doubt. I would come with half of that. You would come with half of that. And then we would give it to the kohen and say, whichever one of us was the one that ate the truma, the money is fully that person's. I want to add that detail. Different than by truma and tara. You can be machman on everything.
Right, if they came independently.
One second, I want to answer Rabbi Mendel's question. This case of the Mishnah is that we knew the box of truma was worth $100. The only thing is we lost. Now we don't know which one is which. But there was truma worth of $100. Both of us ate it b'shoigig. There was a chiyuv to pay keren v'chaimish. Since two people ate it, that's the Gemara's l'chayda saying, according to Rabbi Yossi, the din would be both of us have to come up with the money together. Means each one half, and agree with each other that if you were the one that ate it, I'm gifting you with half. If I was the one that ate it, you're gifting me with that half. We'll have to make all these things are not spoken out in the Yerushalmi. In the Bavli, they would go through these nuances, these details. Okay, so that's the yes, Kevin. I'm sorry. What were you saying?
They both came independently together in both cases, the road and the other case. There's suffix and they're both free to go. There's no penalty.
First of all, there's no penalty when it comes to Tuma and Tara. It's not a penalty.
No, I mean, they're not.
In other words, according to the being that suffix Tuma b'Reshus Harabim Tar, so it's like a halacha.
But they came independently, therefore they're both tahor. But if they came together, they're both guilty.
Since Beis Din cannot say both tar, they can't say you're both tar because it's not shayach. So since they can't say those words, they have to say both tamei. Okay, so it says.
So if the true one's worth $100, then the chul's also worth that same amount.
Same amount. I would say that to be realistic, for them to get mixed up together, like it must be that they were very similar to each other. Practically, which probably also means it was the same value. $2, you go to the market, you buy a standard box of whatever, of apples. If they come, I know they come in boxes sometimes. And all boxes have more or less the same amount and they look the same. Okay, now, says the Gemara, no, you're wrong. Our Mishnah goes l'kula alma, because let me tell to you and clarify the machlokes and taras. You misunderstood it. You applied it too broadly. B'man nan kaimin. What do you think is the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi? Before we will say what is the argument, that's the Gemara typical, it's going to tell you what's not the argument. First of all, everyone agrees that im binisha alu shneim ka'achas, everyone agrees. If they come together and they say, Beis Din, are we tamei? Are we tahor? No one would say that Beis Din can say you're both tahor. They can't say that. Vadai. If they come b'zachar zeh, that's the key. You misunderstood Rabbi Yossi. If they do not come at the same time, by the way, they can be in the same courtroom at the same time. So make that clear. But they're not asking, what are we? It can be me and you. I'm standing in front of the bed. You're right there. And I say, Beis Din, what's my halacha? Beis Din can tell me I'm tar. Suffix tamei tar. The other one says, what am I? You're tar. And everyone will agree to that. That's what the Gemara wants to make it clear over here. Daf samach tes amud beis. So where do they argue? Ela ki nan kaimen. What is the argument standing on? What's the mitzias? What's the case? When one person comes and he tells the Beis Din, I want to know what's my status and what's my friend's status. The big chacham, the big helper, the shalom maker. So he's not asking only for himself. When he asks on himself, and he doesn't say we, even if he doesn't say we, he says, I need to know, I walked on road A. My friend walked on road B. Can you please tell me what's my status, what's his status? It's one shaila. They packaged it together. Rabbi Yehuda says that, you know what Beis Din tells a person? No, it's everyone will agree, now that we established, Beis Din cannot say both tar. So if I'm asking for me and for my friend, Beis Din will not be able to say we're both tar. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, you know what Beis Din can say? You're asking the wrong question. Why are you asking about your friend? Let your friend ask about your friend. You ask for yourself. Beis Din has the right to enlighten the questioner, the chacham who's asking the question. I know you have Ahavas Yisrael, you care about your friend, you're ruining it for him. You ask for you. They have the right to answer only part of the question. That's a gewaldige machlok. We're talking about the shvil. No, we're talking about the shvil. It's not about, is that even though one person asked a question, Beis Din is not chayiv to answer the full question of the person who asked. Because in this case, they know it would be to their disadvantage. Beis Din has the right to tell him, the Beis Din, in plural, the Beis Din tells the one who's asking, they correct their question. The way I understand it, they don't answer half. You don't get to answer half. but you can tell the person re-ask the question, reformulate the question. It's very gavaldik. Sho'oil dilach, you ask about yourself, and ve'ezelach, and gegesund hate.
Doesn't the Beis know they came together, so
They didn't
should
come together first. They did not come together. He's asking for his fellow.
both. So therefore,
and Beis Din knows that if they answer the full question, they'll have to pass on the chumrah. Beis Din knows that there is a rule of safek tuma b'reshus harabim sfeikotar, and actually, I think that would be the responsibility of Beis Din. I find this very common today. Whatever, when a person asks a shaila, it's not wrong for a Rav to tell the person, ask it differently. In other words, the way you are asking it,
giving you a hint.
Yeah, not hint. You tell him. They tell him, ask, re-ask. Ask for you, don't ask for your friend. Rabbi Yossi says it's too late. They don't get to determine that based on. Once the person asks the question, is where we already said everyone is maida that they have to answer the question. The full question, since they can't answer both tar, can't do that, so it has to go to the other extreme. They're both tamei. And therefore, here, no one is coming to ask about the fellow. That's the way we learn pshat in these words. Other people learn differently. No one is coming to ask for his fellow. So everyone will be maida, like the Mishnah writes, that the one who ate one box, Beis Din will tell him pater, whether it means like Tosfos, whether it means like the Rambam. The other person is asking the question, Beis Din can say pater, because it's not called asking, or let me word it differently. If in our Mishnah, I ate one box, Aviv, you ate in the other box. If one of us would come to Beis Din and say, Beis Din, this is what happened, am I an Aviv chayiv or not? Machloikes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. That's a word that Rabbi Yehuda will say, Beis Din should tell me, don't ask about Aviv. Let him worry about him. You ask about you. And I'll ask again, and they'll say, I'm Potter. And Rabbi Yossi will hold, they don't get to correct me in how I ask my question.
So it really is the same.
So really, in other words, it really is the same. The word is that the case of our Mishnah is not subject to our machlokes. Okay, and now, very good. And now I'm just going to read the last part of the Mishnah.
Sorry, one last question.
Sure.
When we are questioning witnesses who come forward for Rosh Chodesh, do we do the same?
Very good, Aviv. Okay. I want to say it like this: that here, when Adam come to court, I know now we're not talking about Adam, but Kavan is bringing in that we find something similar, as we learned in the Rambam, that once Beis Din wants to establish Rosh Chodesh, for whatever reason, they have the right to reasons, then they will not be, Beis Din is not, if they don't want to, be choyked and doirish the Edom as they normally do. Remember that? They don't do that. They have the right to be very vague, making it very easy for people to testify. And on the other hand, we learned this in the Rambam, is that if they have their reasons, and it can be for secondary reasons, if they want Rosh Chodesh to be tomorrow, they have the right to interrogate the Edom to the point that they're going to confuse the Edom and they won't be Edom. So you're making a very good comparison. Similar to Rabbi Yehuda, even though it's not the same because they were speaking about Edom and they were speaking uniquely about Chiddush HaChodesh. We're not speaking about a normal monetary case or a capital case.
Beis Din has flexibility.
Beis Din has flexibility, but yeah, very good. I really like this. This is this detail of, I never thought about this, is that can Beis Din educate the one who's asking how to re-ask the question? Machlekes Tanoim. My financials, Beis Din cannot be a lawyer. For sure. But here it's an interesting, in other words, it's not about the content, it's about a bigger question of, can Beis Din inspire you to reformulate the question?
Story in the Gemara once where the Adam told the lady how to ask the question.
No, I don't remember Danny. Danny remembers a story in the Gemara like this, where a woman was told how to re-ask the question.
Right? And then they asked how is he allowed to do that? And then
because no one was protecting her. So normally, okay, very good. In other words, the rule is the Beis Din cannot act on behalf of one of the litigants. But even there has to be leeway. In other words, if Beis Din sees that this person is innocent, but the other person is more articulate, the other person is more intimidating, or if Beis Din, there's some leeway that a dayan has to have.
This is the case. This is benefiting both parties.
This is benefiting, in our case, both parties. Correct. I know. So not the same, but still the same. In other words, this is an interesting machlekes. Okay, now I want to go back again. I'm going now to Daf Samach Zayin Amud Beis in our pagination, and I want to read the last case of the Mishnah. So the last case of the Mishnah was that you had two boxes again, Aviv, no third, two boxes, one truma, one chulin, and someone planted one of the two boxes. If someone plants truma, there's two knas. Knas number one is you have to overturn the ground. If that didn't happen, gedule truma is called a knas. That's consequential because all of your work, tevel has a lot more value. I know that you have to separate from tevel the truma sumaisris, but then you get to keep the rest. If what you planted is all truma, then everything is truma. And even for the kohen, it's consequential. Why? Because if the kohen owns chulin, what he owns is more valuable. You can sell chulin and make money. The mei chulin. If you have truma, even if you sell it, you only get the mei truma. So first of all, vadai gedule truma, and that's a drabanan knas. If a person planted one of these two boxes, that's the case of the Mishnah. Maybe he didn't even plant truma. Maybe he planted chulin. Same thing. Zoras achas v'hem. I'm reading the Mishnah. So first of all, potter. Potter means both. He's exempt from turning over the ground. Potter also means that which grows does not have a din of gedulei truma. It's tevel, a machaya. It's better. But same thing. Now that I planted one box and I'm being told that what I planted was chulin, so for me the other box is truma. Do we go all the way, Rabbi Yosi, or do we say l'chumra both sides? Same achlek as we had before. Vashniya, the other one, naike truma. But I'm chayv and chala divided of meir. Rabbi Yosi says no. Since the one that I planted doesn't have to be overturned, since the one that I planted does not create truma, that means that they paskin for me that the one that I planted aviv was chulin. If this one is chulin, the other one is truma. If the other one is truma, then you don't take chala off it. Now another person planted the other box. Same thing. The other guy, right? They didn't ask together. Gets to say the same thing. For the other one, the one that he planted was chulin. The one that I planted was truma, but he planted chulin. Now, says the Mishnah, if one person planted both boxes, now vadai in the ground, there's truma. So now the Mishnah introduces a new thing. Now we have to see whether it's a type, it's a species whose seeds decomposes, zaroi kole, or it's a species she'ein zaroi kole. I'm reading the Mishnah. So says the Mishnah, b'davoi she'zaroi kole, since the seeds decompose, the gedule truma is complete, a rabbinic law, legamre, because really the truma decomposed. What comes out, we learn in Chassidus that where does the new plant come from? Not from the seed, b'chlal not. The plant comes from the koyach ein soif that's in Malchus and the earth. The seed only stimulates the earth to give forth that type of plant, but it's not coming from the seed. So b'davar shezaroi kala, we can be more lenient. The Mishnah says mutter, even though there's vadai truma in the ground. But uvedavar she'ein zarei kala. But if, let's say, it's an onion, when you plant an onion, whatever the bulb, the part that you put into the ground does not decompose, it begins to give forth new growth, but the bulb is there. So over there we say asur. You have to be more machmer. Okay.
Why can't you just say the seeds that decomposed was truma? So now my onions are fine.
No. The onions do not decompose.
I know. So I'm saying, but we have both the apples and the onions.
No. Onions and onions, or apples and apples, not apples and onions. No. No. It's once if I planted onions, since I planted both boxes. We're going to have more details. The Gemara is going to say, I planted them, they were in the ground at the same time. We're going to get this in the Gemara in a moment. Since there is a moment where Vadai Truma was planted, you know what we say now? Both of them have to be treated like Truma. This is not financial. By financial, what did I tell you, Aviv? That me and you give the money together. Remember that? We explained that. In the Havamina, according to Rabbi Yosi. Oh no, over here, the Mishnah is saying, since and they're both in the ground at the same time, we don't get to say, that the gedulei truma is not truma. Gedulei truma is truma. Now, from which one? From both. From both. Says our Gemara now. Zog the Gemara. Let me just find the place. Azara acheres hashniya, quoting the case of gedulei truma. 1 second. Let's qualify this. Rab Ze'era says in the name of Rab Chia Barva that v'hu, to be so machmer, even b'davar she'ein zaroi kala. But to say that both of their outgrowths, both of the gedulei, are truma, that's only shezara es hashniya actually katzar arishayna. I planted the second box before I harvested the first box, which means it's not only that I planted both, is that they were both in the ground at the same time. Very much to what we just learned from Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. If they come together, here it's different, but it's the same concept. There has to be a togetherness. There has to be a moment where you can't say you're good. Vadai, there's a problem at the same time. Once Vadai, a problem, like in the case of Shnei Shvilim, they're both Tamei. But, okay, but Im Zoras Hashniya, Mishe Kotzar, that's the Girsa Sarashoina. But if I planted both boxes, but I only planted the second box after I harvested the first, Ein Talush Umechumar Nasu Hoicheyach. Is this Chazik Kesura. We don't say since they were together and there's Vadai a problem, now you have to put the problem on both. There was never a problem. When I planted one, halachically we get to say, by the way, even by Davar She'ein Zari Kola, if I plant one box, in the first case of the Mishnah, where I plant one of the two boxes, even by onions, we don't say a gedulei truma truma. We don't say that. Okay. Just want to add a little detail about gedulei truma. We're going to see it in a moment. When we say gedulei by davar she'ein zarei kala, right? If the seed does not decompose, when we don't say gedulei truma truma, what does that mean? What that means is, as we'll see in a moment, is that the original onion that I put into the ground is truma. But that which grows is not truma. We're going to get into this in a moment. And before we go on, let me add one intro for the next final piece. And that is, Atkan, the general rule that gidulei truma truma. Now the question is, what's the din of gidulei gidulin? Is gidulei gidulin truma or not? Now, just like in our Mishnah, we differentiated between davar shezarei kala uba davar she'ein zarei kala. In our case of the Mishnah, when you had both in the ground at the same time, this same concept we find in the Mishnah, that when it comes to gidulei truma, we differentiate whether it's davar shezarei kala, but davar shezarei kala, gidulin are not truma, even not midrabanan, because the seed decomposed. I put an apple seed in the ground. Biblically, the apple tree should be tevel. It should be normal, tevel. Midrabanan, you put an apple, you put a truma seed, the whole tree, lo'olam vad, gedulei truma. But if I take a seed from the tree and I put it into the ground, gedulin is not truma. If I planted an onion or a garlic or belashon hamishna davar she'ein zarei kala, there generally there's a problem with the detail. Even by gidulin. So says the Gemara, Rab Chanina tirtoya, and we're going to quote the B'Shem Rabbi Yanai. We're going to quote the Shitas Rabbi Yanai says that Batzel shall truma sha'akarei ushasaloi. We're speaking about gidulin. Just make it clear. We're not speaking about gedulei truma. We're speaking about gedulei truma of an onion, gedulei truma of a species. She'ein zarei kala, that the seed does not decompose. Even though I just said the general rule, if the seed decompose, gedulin is good. If the seed does not decompose, even gedulin is a problem. Not so simple. It's a problem, but it's not a problem. Which means that mikiven sherava olav hechadash, if the new growth exceeds the original, then it becomes tevel. How much does it have to exceed? The ratio of 100 to 1. In other words, Even though everyone knows, gidule truma bedavar she'ein zarei kala is also truma. No. It's truma, but it's a truma that it's a truma that's subject to becoming nullified. From what? From itself. In other words, then you have meduma. It cannot be eaten by a kohen, but you know that the percent of it is kach v'kach. So if I'm a Yisrael, that percent I have to gift, and the rest I sell b'dimei truma. B'diuk. Yes, I do. I have to not plant it. Let's go with that. And if I planted it, that's the only way out. But that's a big chiddush. In other words, Rabbi Yanai is being lenient. Normally, everyone knew gedule truma b'davar she'ein zarei kala is also problematic. He says no. It's problematic, but the new growth is not truma. Problem is that you got a mixture. But once you reach the ratio needed for bittul, it can be mavatalit. Frekt Rab Ze'era on the sheet of Rabbi Yanai, but did we not learn in our Mishnah? Look at the logic of the Gemara's question. Esh zarei kolei. In our Mishnah, we also have a nafkamina between zarei kolei or not. It's the same, but it's not the same. I know it's not about gedulim, but it's about where there's a suffix. So we say, suffix truma, basically. Gedule truma is okay. But if you planted it together, even the suffix, is it always a problem? The Mishnah says it depends. What did the Mishnah say? Esh zarei kola, it's muter. V'davar she'ein zarei kola, aser. That's what the Mishnah says. So now asks Rab Ze'era, let me think a second. Davar she'zarei kola muter. You know why it's muter? If the seed is not there, then everything that grows, whatever grew, you have more mutter than aser. And let me, Rabbi Mendel, not only more mutter than aser, you have the ratio needed. If the aser is kala, we're viewing it, he's understanding it, is that isn't it, by the case of darei shezarei mutter, does it not mean that you will always have de facto, since zarei kala, de facto, the new growth will always have enough to exceed the non-existent seed? So to make the symmetry functional, does it not mean udekavase, when the Mishnah contrasts, when it differentiates, and it says that davar she'ein zarei kala is asur, should it not mean afal pi shiraba olav achadash, still it's going to be asur? If not, you don't have a real contrast. Now you can argue against it, but that's his premise. So says the Gemara Rab Ze'era, actually, kedaite, I want you to know that, yeah, I get your question. And actually, what we quoted is only B'Shem Rabbi Yanai, and Rab Ze'era, who's asking this question, follows Rabbi Yonasan, who argues with Rabbi Yanai. Kedaite, elsewhere, that what? The Omar Rab Ze'era in the name of Rabbi Yonasan, Rabbi Yanai, Rabbi Yonasan. And same, but different. Not Truma. How much ratio do you need by Kilei Akerem Aviv? 200 to 1. Same concept. Someone took an onion. The onion was planted in a vineyard. So the onion is called Kilei Akerem. You took it out. But instead of destroying it wrongfully, you planted it in a stama field, in an onion field. And now it begins to grow. So what's the din? Batzel shel Kilei Akerem. Sha'akaroi, you uprooted it, and now you replanted it. You replanted it in a place where it should have been planted from the outset. So you know what Rabbi Yonasan says? Even though we have a normal rule, that what? That if you have mutter against asr by Kilei Akerem 200 to 1, the Kilei Akerem is nullified, says Rabbi Yonasan, afilu hoisiv kama, even if you have 400 times more, doesn't matter the quantity, it will all remain asr. You know why? Because she'ein gidule isur malinesu isur. Gedule Isur, that's the Gavaldik. So there's Machloikes Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yonasan. Rabbi Yonasan says, you know, we have a din, I'm just giving a comparison, that milk that comes from a treifa animal, what din is it? Davar hayoytze min ha'asur, asur. That's a standard law in kashrus. An egg from a non-kosher bird is asur. The exception is honey, but that's because the honey is not coming from the bee. It's coming from the plant. But normally, something that's a product of asur is automatically asur. So here, b'davar she'ein zarei kala, the onion, since the original is kilei akerem or gedulei truma, when it comes to gedulei gedulin, Rabbi Yonason will hold that by gidule truma b'davar she'ein zarei kala, I don't care if what grew was 100 against it, 200 against it. What's growing is inherently asur, because it's coming from isur. Something that extends from a davar ha'asur is asur. That's Rabbi Yonason. And then a Chanami. But Rabbi Yanai argues with that. Rabbi Yanai holds that even if the core is asur, if you change locations, I'll give you a good mashal al pi Chasidus. If you have a person and they really are not the way they should be, and they don't do tshuva yet, but they do good things, they produce good things. How do you look at that? And until now, amongst the oilam, there's like a machloikas. Some people feel if it came from Yachaim Yankel, the Russia, it's asur. Or you say, no, he has a problem. He has to do tshuva. He's not rectified. But if he produced something new, then why is it asur? And adarabba, at some point, if what he does is more good than bad, whatever the ratio is, nikrat tzadik bedin. That's the machloikas. It's gavaldik between Rabbi Yonason and Rabbi Yanai. And on that we say hadron Allah ha'oichel truma. And God willing, Morgan, we are starting the 8th chapter. Ha'isha shahoisa oicheles.
Converts, we say, comes from a different place, but it's good.
But there it's different, Kevin. It's not a good example because there we're saying that they were transformed. In other words, if a person does tshuva, vadai, what he does is good. Question is like when a ganav gives tzedakah. That's the thing. Do you take it? Do you not take it? Not the money is stolen. You're not allowed to do it. I'm talking about how do we feel about it? How do you feel about someone who produces amazing music, but is not that kosher? That's the machloikas, Rabbi Yonason and Rabbi Yanai. That's exactly what this is. A Yosef and a Atzir is mutter or